Hey everyone, today I'm really excited to speak with our guest, Lauren Trethowan. She is an absolute powerhouse, a registered psychologist who has led a number of HR and learning and development roles from consulting at PwC to large organizations like Australia Post, and now she is the head of Organisational Development and Learning at MYOB, which is a reputable accounting software organization. So, really, just wanted to take some time today to jump into this amazing space and speak with Lauren today, as there is an expansive shift in the world consciousness and how people and organizations are needing to behave and operate and develop in this brand new world that we venture into. So today we're going to crack open this conversation around organizational development in this new world. Personally, I feel that people are at the heart of any organization, and now it's going to be more important than ever for executives to put focus on their people rather than what we've previously known as human resources. So, wanted to jump in and ask Lauren some quick questions to open the conversation up, which is really just looking, Lauren, like if you look at your sort of experience, you've got an impressive range of history working at some great companies. So for our audience to learn from, how would you, I guess, describe what you do and why is it important for organizations?
Thanks, Ben. I have developed quite an aversion to the term HR, and I think it's probably something that since coming to MYOB has been kind of front of mind. So we actually have our work designed in terms of employee experience. So we have workplace experience teams, digital experience teams, and people experience teams that come together to manage our employee experience for all of our team members. And so when we think about the work that we're doing, it's really about, is this going to deliver an exceptional experience for our people? And I really like to think about the work that I do in those terms around how do we help people either make sure that what they're doing on a daily basis is really easy to do, helps them set themselves up for success, or really delivers a differentiated experience that we can go to market with and kind of say, hey, come and work for MYOB. It's a really great place to work, and these are the reasons why. So that's kind of how I like to think about the work that we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting, like in the past, it's been very much around this sort of human resources, human capital perspective, and there's definitely an element of this people experience perspective to how we build organizations and how we focus on our people and enable them with the best experience to really flourish and get the best value for them and for the companies. So yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. And I see you're actually a certified psychologist. So how did you actually get into this industry? Like, what attracted you to get into this space?
So I studied psychology at university, and I was actually doing a Bachelor of Commerce degree and happened to pick up one psych unit because I knew a few people that were doing the course and thought it sounded kind of interesting. And then I really enjoyed it and decided to shift across to doing a double degree so that I could pick up the Bachelor of Arts and do my psych degree through there as well. Kept going, did honours, and then had 2 years of supervision through a supervisor to get registration. And I, first of all, was kind of heading down the path of probably more clinical psychology. And I did a number of different placements whilst I was at uni, one of which was with Lifeline, which I learned a ton from, but decided that clinical psych wasn't really where I wanted to spend my time. And at that time, the world of organisational psychology was still quite new. And I found a couple of firms that had their home base in the UK that was far more kind of mature in terms of org psych as a field of study. And yeah, started to do some work with those organisations on assessment centres and psychometric testing and behavioural interviewing, and then kind of moved from there into the grad role at PwC. And I was in the people function there and started building up an area of expertise around change management and people within organisations and talent strategies and all the work that comes from there. So it's been a path that's kind of evolved over time. There wasn't really any set direction when I started out to be where I am now.
Definitely. No, that is super interesting. And do you find that like organizations and yourself are actually using a lot of that sort of psychometric stuff or behavior-based psychology work inside their roles? Or does it sort of get left behind?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that lots of organisations are making use of those assessments. There's a time and a place for all of it, right? So some of the assessments are more geared towards development as opposed to selection. So it's just about making sure that you're using the right assessment for the right purpose.
Yeah, perfect. And do you have any good examples of like successful assessments or successful uses of that in whether it's in your organization or whether it's in another organization that you've heard of?
We use an assessment of emotional and social intelligence as part of our development program. And so people get an insight into their how other people view their emotional and social intelligence. And then that information then goes into a coaching session and forms the start of the development plan for them. So I think in that instance, it's a really great insight for them to understand how the people that they're working with on a regular basis see them, and then they can assess what sort of development programs they've put in place as a result of that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that's definitely one of the challenges that I've seen is people being able to, I guess, work well together and the dynamic that exists between them. So I think if we can understand better how people interact and what they need to develop with each other and as individuals, that could be really valuable. So thanks for sharing that. And so really thinking about this current crisis and this shift in consciousness, and for some people it's been positive, and you hear different thoughts of people are taking this really well, and some people are taking this in a more worsened state of mind. Some people are working harder and more productive, and some people are less productive and working less. So how do you think this is really going to affect the business world, and what are some of the behavioral and psychological changes we can expect in this workforce ahead?
Well, I think first up, there's probably an increased expectation from employees that their employer will play a role in their financial health, their mental health, their physical health. And so that's driven a lot of organisations to really spend time and effort to help develop programs in this area. I think that as a result of, certainly from my experience and what I've seen at MYOB, we've successfully shifted to everyone working from home relatively seamlessly. We had a lot of programs in place prior to COVID-19 forcing us to work from home around working flexibly, and those pilots and programs and training sessions and team charters and insights into when people like to work from at different times of the day, when they're more productive, all of that sort of work that happened beforehand really helped us make the shift. But I think that now organisations are needing to define what their new normal is around remote working. And it'll be really interesting to see, some organisations have now, we're in early June right now, some organisations have said that they won't be requiring employees or even allowing employees to return to the office until the end of the year. And other organisations are gearing up to come back as soon as the government says it's safe to do so, obviously with all of the cleaning and social distancing practices in place. So it'll be really interesting to see how organisations choose to define what that new normal looks like. And certainly for us, we're starting to think about the fact that we want to be able to offer people choice. So ideally, we'd like employees and their teams to be able to have conversations together, to draw up team charters around when they're going to work from various locations and what kind of work it is that they need to do, and therefore how they're going to best do that work. So if that work involves collaboration and really does need some face time, they can work that into how they work together. And if that work is individual work or something that requires a lot of concentration, then the choice to be able to do that from home is there available to them as well. So I'd say that my prediction would be that remote work increases, but I think that it needs to be down to the choice of what works best for the team and what works best for the individual when defining what that looks like.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like we started we also started prior to this, working out how we can make it more available in terms of working from home for various people in their different situations. And I think giving people a choice, like not everyone wants to work from home, and although you think that everyone would, different people have different circumstances, and you have to enable, I guess, a dynamic solution for people. Depending on their situation. Some people have families and busy houses and no good workspace. So how do you cater to that? And I think to your earlier point too, one of the challenges is that businesses, although we're in sort of this employer market, so to speak, if organizations want to get the most value out of their people and out of their company, they need to really focus on that. That the sort of mental health and really support people through this time, because you can hire people, and in this sort of new world of working from home, you need to be able to motivate people, you need to be able to support people, and people are going to want to not obviously have a job, but also be in a company that supports them and has supported them through this time. And it will definitely reflect on which organizations really thrive in the future because of how they've handled these sort of situations and how people value working in such organizations. And I think that will go a long way into the future. So I think, it will be interesting to see how organizations, beyond the sort of working from home and the adapting sort of remote work situation, like how do they prioritize their people experience, and how do they prioritize the things that maybe weren't as important before because they thought these things didn't matter. Like, why do we need to give people this flexibility, or where these are things that are needed now, and they're required and expected, and so it's sort of changed the game. So I guess
I read an article quite recently that was saying that as the labour market does start to pick up, a really common question they're predicting during interviews will be from candidates asking employers how they've treated their workforce during the period of the coronavirus. I think that's right. Like, I think that people will, once we return to a place where the kind of supply and demand to what it was probably pre-COVID-19 and the power, I suppose, sits more with the employees, or that the choice of where they work sits more with the employees. I think that'll be a really key question that people will be asking and wanting to understand a little bit more.
Exactly, because I think they're almost like, I think people, and this is just an assumption, but I sort of feel that people will have adapted to reduced loads and adjusting their lifestyle due to the situation, and realize that some things are more important in life, and so what's really important for my well-being and for my workplace that I want to be a part of. If you've been moved down to 70%, 80% load, like, okay, well, I thought I couldn't live on that before, but now I think I can. And the things that I valued more was having this time, having a little bit more flexibility, having an organization that cared for me, that looked through this time. So I think organizations are really going to have to not just think, okay, well, this is an employee's market. They're going to have to think, well, how do I actually really focus on my people and up level, the whole organization, the people experience beyond the expectations that were previously there. Yeah, excellent. So, and I guess, is there anything else that you sort of see that that businesses need to start thinking when it comes to organizational change, given the current climate?
I think going to be a different mix of employees working in organisations. My prediction would be that organisations are going to be a little bit more cautious about taking on full-time permanent employees, and you might see far more of that contingent workforce starting to emerge. And also from an employee perspective, not wanting to just rely on one role, because if you lose that one role, that's your single source of income, but rather managing across 3 or 4 different employers, just to reduce that risk. So I'd suggest that the contingent workforce is probably going to expand, and that gig workforce that we've been hearing a lot about, but probably haven't seen so much in organisations, probably has more of an impetus to actually emerge now.
I definitely agree that this sort of gig economy, it was always going to happen, and we're starting to see that in the sort of less of the sort of standard, more task-based jobs and more sort of corporate range where we are looking at that sort of contractor workforce, and people want more flexibility. So from the employee side, having multiple jobs is also appealing, and the security from that perspective is not as necessary, or it's maybe sort of adjusted and expected. And also, I think from the employer side, I think it is in many ways can be more effective if you can manage a contractor workforce effectively, and be able to sort of scale up and down based on demand. So I think I definitely agree that this is a shift that was always going to happen, and now we're just going to see a sort of expedited version of what was going to happen in 5 to 10 years is probably 5 years earlier than maybe what we were going to see.
Yeah. And I think as well, the way that organisations think about their critical talent is going to shift as well. Already there was a move away from detailed position descriptions, even resumes to some extent, and more towards what's the priority that these employees need to be working on. And I think that there's far more of a realisation that as we think about talent, we need to be thinking about who are those critical people, or what are the critical skills and the critical roles that we need in our organisation to make sure that we're successful. And more so from a workflow perspective, looking at those different processes, as opposed to just, we need someone with these skills, we're going to pay top dollar to get it. But actually, there might be someone sitting there that has the skills that you need, or the critical role that you might need, that is equally as important to have in the organisation.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that one as well. I feel like, even for me as a business owner, this time has really made, us think about what do we really need, and how do we use our resources most effectively? Because I think when a business is driving for growth, then you become complacent with what you really need and what sort of level you need, and then this time has really made us think, okay, well, if these are our goals, like what do we need to be to get to there, at the sort of minimum, and then how do we need to support that as we grow? So I definitely think that this time has and will empower organizations to think and avoid getting resources, or over adding resources when they don't need them, and utilizing them in the most effective way. But back to the comment of contractors and leveraging contractor workforce as well, and getting people to be used and used in the best way possible.
Yeah, and I think how organisations think about, okay, I've heard quite a number of organisations in this period looking at their operating model and really thinking creatively around how they can get the best out of the employees they have, but still be amping up the work or continuing with the productivity levels that they've got without needing to add additional people into their pressure, and how they can get more creative and smart around using people in different ways, using them more effectively, that sort of thing. It's kind of forced organisations to think a little bit more creatively in that way.
Yeah, definitely. We have done that too. So yeah, I think that's definitely a great point where we've had to use, and we've even with some of our partners, we've deployed some of our staff who are sort of on lower bandwidths right now to deploy and work with our other teams. We've had a number of shifts across different parts of our team who are working in different departments and probably more effective in some of the roles that they're working with and adding a lot more value than they were. So it really gets you to think differently and to start to think about if you look at people in terms of what sort of skills you need, and then you look across your team, sometimes you can find some amazing talent that already exists in the organization that you can sort of reposition. So I think we're in these exciting times of thinking differently, reevaluating our business models and operating models, and looking at how we move forward as an organization as opposed to how we've done it in the past. It sort of forces you to change, forces you to think differently, which is exciting because many organizations, I think that one of the challenges is that you get stuck in the way that things have been done in the past as opposed to how they could be done in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And get really tight on what your priorities are and stop the things that aren't in those, the most important.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a hard one for many people to do and many organizations to do. But I think when you
totally
the situation, it really opens your eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what do you sort of see as some of the challenges that organizations are facing and will face as they try to transform digitally as a result of this pandemic? So I'd imagine that there's a number of organizations that have been doing things in a very physical element. Do they like for us, we're really focusing on being digital first, and I think many organizations are going to have to think, well, how do I make sure that A, digital is the way to go, and B, I don't want to end up in one of these situations again. So how do I really prioritize this? So what do you think are some of the challenges that they're going to face as a result of trying to transform digitally?
Yeah. So if I think about MYOB's experience when we moved completely online, from a technology perspective, it was fairly seamless because we had a number of technologies already in place in order to be able to work remotely. But there certainly was a learning curve around some of the collaboration tools that we had available and how to use those collaboration tools effectively. I think we have certainly started to make shifts to be more digital in terms of moving some of our learning online. We've looked at our learning journeys and making sure that we've got, where we had a mix of face-to-face and online, we've moved those bits online, completely online. We had our first digital roadshow for all of our employees just earlier this week. So it's certainly been a learning curve for us, but we've actually found in some cases, and for the roadshow and 90-day planning sessions, we've decided that actually the digital solution works better than the face-to-face one did, particularly because we've got employees across Australia and New Zealand. And so, with everyone being on a screen, it kind of gives everyone an equal standing and in input, particularly from an inclusion perspective. So There's certainly been some learnings, but there's also definitely been some benefits for us as an organisation to be able to maximise the value that the digital offering provides for us. Obviously, there's been huge learning curves as well for those organisations that have had to shut their retail stores or move their offering completely online. And I really feel for them. I think, I imagine that there's a lot of support out there to help, particularly the small businesses. I know MYOB is definitely there to help small businesses as they make the transition. But there is a lot for people to get their head around as they make that transition. I mean, I'd be interested to hear from you actually on this one, because I know that you offered face-to-face training through Academy XI as well, and you've moved all of that digitally. So
yeah, well, we were actually
stories through that experience.
we were actually really, really fortunate in the way that probably 6 to 12 months prior to this happening, we had already set the momentum to do this. So we had a sort of 12 to 18 month plan of how do we become a digital first organization. And we built a lot of the programs. So I was actually really surprised at how easy and efficient it was. So it took us probably 1 to 2 weeks. And we were able to sort of speak to all our students and make sure that they're all okay with everything. Obviously some were not as willing to sort of take the online option, but many were. So that was really fantastic that everyone in our community was really supportive of the situation. And I think it would have been much harder if a crisis didn't exist, because people's expectations might be still that they wanted the sort of face-to-face solution. But most of ours were migrated over, and that all worked well. And everything that we do in terms of our business is run on the cloud. So that made it really easy. Everyone could work from home really efficiently. I think it was just more about whose workspace is not as good as the next person's. So that's just about making sure that people have the right space at home to work from home, and all our collaboration tools, whether it be Trello, Slack, all enable easy sort of communication. Zoom. I think the challenges that for us was just initially just making sure that everyone could collaborate, everyone sort of felt engaged. So our head of people programs and culture, chief people officer, really focused on how to make sure that we can still keep that engagement, making sure we've got the right initial meetings, and they did a fantastic job. I think that the main thing was the sort of communication plan that sort of aligned with the transformation. And then now pretty much all our priorities, which were sort of longer priorities, have all been brought forward in terms of making sure that everything is more digitally enabled. So from our sort of CRM system integrations to website developments, those have all been sort of brought forward, which is good. It's a good thing. I think the hard thing that I just sort of imagine that with some businesses, like if you're sort of I guess if you're a sort of a retail business, it's going to, I think there's a lot of businesses are going to have to start to think about how do they change their whole teams, right? Because they might not have digital teams or have limited digital teams, and a lot of their workforce might be sort of that face-to-face element in terms of customer service. So how do they sort of train and develop for that? That's going to be the challenge ahead. All right. So in terms of, you've been working in this industry for quite a while, and I'm sure there's many people out there that are currently thinking about, what do I do next? So what advice, or what would be the advice that you would give other professionals in your field as they go through these times? Do you have any other sort of insights and things that people are working on, or that you've seen out there in the industry?
Well, I think the old adage of following your passion and doing the work that interests you still remains. I think that careers these days are certainly not as linear as they used to be, or at least in terms of how we conceptualize a career. I think that my tip to anyone would be to get as many experiences as you can, because you don't know where one opportunity will lead you and what that piece of skill or experience will give you, and how that connects to something that you might be doing 3 or 4 roles down the track. So I think you've got to just look at every opportunity that you can, or that's handed to you, with the eyes of getting as much skills and experience as you can, and the opportunity that's available to you through that role.
Yeah, fantastic. And is there any things that, any sort of initiatives that you've seen out there in the industry that, I guess especially during these times, that that you think is really interesting, that you or think other people sort of should have a look into?
I think organisations now are really going to be needing to think about what's the role of their office, and why do people come in, how do people design their day to get the most out of their day, and to make sure that they're able to achieve everything that they need to in their day. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, and I think it's going to be potentially different for different organisations around how they now conceptualise the idea of an office, and it not necessarily being somewhere that everyone comes to every single weekday, but for particular purposes, and getting clear around what are the opportunities for us to come together? How do we think about our culture and the opportunity to maintain the kind of culture that we want? And where are those face-to-face moments throughout the year, or as a team throughout the week, for us to come together and spend time together? I think that'll be really important for organisations to define what works best for them, based on their workforce and their strategy.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. And I think it's going to be one of my future podcasts then, around how do we use space and our workforce better. And I think it really is going to be an interesting thing that we explore into, is what is the purpose of the workplace? What is, how does culture enable us to work most effectively? What sort of workforce do we leverage in terms of contractor, part-time, full-time? And just really thinking carefully around what a workplace is, and how does it best work efficiently? Because I think, it completely changes the world, right? As soon as the workplace is if part of it's remote, it then it then enables different people's levels of flexibility. It enables you to access talent around the world. It enables you to reach different audiences of talent. So there's a huge valuable amount of working mums who have amazing skills out there, and but can't work more than 3 days a week. So how does this open up new opportunities? How does it enable people to have more work-life balance? I think we're really starting to, I think we're going to see a new way of organizational development, and how businesses run, and the way that we use these resources. And I wonder what sort of tools or platforms will emerge to enable this to be done effectively, because I guess that's the sort of logistical challenge of making this work effectively. It's always been a sort of roadblock to working, having all these sort of disparate systems and platforms that make managing all these sort of different resources really difficult. And I'm sure if there's some tech people out there, you're thinking about a good new business idea, maybe it's something to do with how do you really manage resources and time effectively. There's many good systems out there, but what's the sort of the holy grail of this new world solution that we live into?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some great examples as well in New Zealand in particular, of organisations going to a 4-day working week, and thinking about breaking down jobs into the roles that need to happen, and how they can be redesigned or rejigged across more people, fewer people, taking out some of those roles. So some of those jobs within a role. So I think that there's certainly going to be an explosion there of designing roles for particular, and breaking up roles into the component parts, and moving those pieces around a little bit more to allow greater flexibility, and have different workday hours accommodated for.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, entrepreneurs. There's an idea for you. How do you solve this problem and how do you make it effective? Fantastic. And before we wrap up, I guess I just wanted to, I think it's really interesting. You're working on project, you're deputy chair on 100% project, which is a not-for-profit. And maybe you could sort of just give a quick understanding of what it is and why you got involved.
Yeah, thank you. So 100% Project is all about gender equality in Australian organisations. And I feel really passionate about the topic. I think that there's plenty of opportunity. We always joke about the fact that it'll be a great day when we're no longer needed, but it feels like we're still needed for the time being. And we run a number of events every year. We're in the process of actually shifting, our ways of working to move those events online as well. But we've also identified a number of opportunities in doing so because it allows our panelists to come from anywhere, really, globally, rather than holding our events in a particular city. So there's lots of learnings for us there as well. But yeah, we run a number of events. We partner with master's students completing their Masters in Organisational Psychology and bring the research that they develop through their Masters to life or PhDs to life through our events, and really bring a real world kind of lens to the data that they've found through their research projects.
Fantastic. That sounds excellent. And is that something that is there any way that people can support that initiative?
Yeah, visit our website, the 100percentproject.com.au, and you can find out plenty more information there.
Fantastic. And in terms of anyone wanting to get in contact with you, what's the sort of best way? LinkedIn? If people want to sort of ask questions?
Yeah, LinkedIn's best. Yeah, Lauren Trethowan.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, look, if you have any questions and or comments, please share them in the LinkedIn post that we will be providing to you all. And really hope that you got some great value out of this today. And really wanted to say thank you so much, Lauren, for the amazing insights that you've had. And hopefully this sort of triggers great conversations for people to explore organizational development and the importance of people experience that is going to become ever so important in this new world. Thank you very much and stay tuned.